The day she
We need
showed
to
up at
talk
my
about
farm,
this.
I was
I
covered in
know.
grease,
It's
sweat dripping
important.
down my back, thinking about nothing more than fixing an old tractor and getting through another quiet afternoon. I had no idea that within 24 hours, my entire life would flip upside down because of one sentence spoken by a stranger. My name is Ethan Miller. I am 27 years old, and for the past 3 years, I have been running my family farm alone in Scottsbluff, western Nebraska. It's not a fancy place, just a few hundred acres of corn and wheat, some cattle, and land that has been passed down for generations. My parents died in a car accident back in 2022, and overnight, everything they built landed on my shoulders. I stayed because this farm is the last piece of them I have left. Selling it was never an option. Life here is simple but demanding. I wake up before sunrise, feed the animals, fix fences the wind keeps knocking down, and hope the weather shows mercy on my crops. I'm not rich, but I get by. Most days it's just me, the land, and the endless Nebraska sky. That afternoon in late March felt no different. It was unusually warm, close to 80 degrees, dry air carrying the smell of dust and soil. I was by the barn working on the tractor, a country song playing softly on the radio. Then I heard tires crunching on the gravel driveway. That alone caught my attention. People don't just stop by my place. I wiped my hands on a rag and looked up to see a sleek black SUV pulling in. Clean, polished, the kind of vehicle that clearly didn't belong on a dirt road like mine. The door opened, and a woman stepped out. She was tall, dressed sharp in a blazer and heels that immediately sank into the soft ground. Her auburn hair was tied back neatly, but her hands shook slightly as she adjusted her bag. What struck me most was her eyes. They were focused, but tired, like she hadn't slept in days. She walked toward me with careful steps, trying not to stumble on the uneven ground. "Are you Ethan Miller?" she asked. I nodded, still confused. "That's me. Can I help you?" She took a deep breath, glanced around the farm, then looked straight at me. "My name is Clare Whitmore. I need a husband by tomorrow." I froze. The rag slipped from my hand, hanging there uselessly. For a second, I thought it had to be a joke or some kind of scam, but her face was serious. No smile, no hesitation. "I'm sorry," I said slowly. "You need what?" But what she said next would change everything I thought I knew about my quiet life on this farm. Instead of backing down, she reached into her bag and pulled out a thick folder, handing it to me. "If I'm not married by my 29th birthday, which is tomorrow, I lose control of my company." I flipped through the pages. Legal documents, a will, news articles. The Whitmore Group. I knew that name. A massive agricultural corporation based out of Lincoln with land and operations all over Nebraska, even some bordering my own fields. She watched me closely. "My grandfather built it. His will says I must be married to retain control. If not, it goes to my cousin, Ryan Whitmore." I handed the folder back, my head spinning. "Why me? You don't even know me." She hesitated. "Your farm borders one of our properties. I researched you. You're independent, not connected to industry politics, and you're not someone who can be bought. My ex-fiancée left last week when I refused to sign deals that would hurt small farmers. Ryan would destroy everything my grandfather stood for." I leaned against the fence, trying to process it all. I had heard stories about Ryan Whitmore. Buyouts, pressure tactics, farmers forced off their land. The same kind of people my parents had fought against their whole lives. "So what are you asking?" I said. "Legal marriage," she replied. "On paper, we register tomorrow. Lawyers handle the rest. After I secure the board, we can quietly annul it." I shook my head. "I'm not doing this for money. If I agree, there are no lies. And if it becomes real, it's because we choose it." She looked surprised, then nodded. "Deal." We shook hands right there by the barn, and her palm was cool against my rough skin. I didn't know it then, but that handshake was the moment everything began. The next morning felt unreal, like I was moving through someone else's life. Claire and I drove into town together just after sunrise. The sky was pale pink over the fields, and the road was quiet except for the hum of her SUV. Neither of us talked much, not because it was awkward, but because we both understood how strange this was. Two strangers heading to a courthouse to get married with no love story, no family gathered, no celebration waiting afterward. The county courthouse in Scottsbluff was small and plain. A brick building with flags out front and a few cars in the parking lot. Claire's lawyer met us there, along with one of my neighbors, Tom, who agreed to be a witness after I told him I needed a favor and promised to explain later. The ceremony itself was fast. No rings, no vows beyond what the law required. We signed our names, shook the judge's hand, and just like that, Claire Whitmore became my wife. I looked at her as we walked out. She looked relieved, but there was still tension in her shoulders, like she was bracing for the next wave. This was not how anyone imagined starting a marriage, especially not someone like her. But it was done. By evening, the paperwork was already filed. Claire's legal team worked fast. Statements were being drafted for the Whitmore Group board to confirm that the will had been satisfied. On the drive back to the farm, she stared out the window at the open land, her fingers tapping lightly against her knee. "I appreciate this, Ethan," she said quietly. "More than you know. I just want things clear," I replied. "If this is going to work, we need rules." She nodded. Agreed. That night, she went back to Lincoln to pack and handle business. The house felt just as quiet as it always had. I slept poorly, replaying everything in my head, wondering if I had just made the smartest or dumbest decision of my life. She came back the next morning with 2 suitcases and a serious look on her face. "Ryan's already moving," she said as I helped her carry her bags inside. "He hired investigators. If this marriage looks fake, he will challenge it in court. I need to stay here full time." I showed her the guest room, my parents' old bedroom. I had kept it mostly untouched. Fresh sheets, clean floors, but the memories still lived there. It felt strange opening that door for someone else. The first few days were awkward. Our lives couldn't have been more different. I was up before dawn every morning, pulling on my boots and heading to the barn. Claire started her days later, brewing coffee in my old percolator and jumping into video calls with lawyers and board members. Her voice carried through the house, confident and sharp, while I came in around noon, dusty and tired, grabbing a quick sandwich before heading back out. We barely talked beyond the basics. "Coffee's ready. The internet's slow. The fence needs fixing." It felt like 2 separate worlds under one roof. Then on the 3rd day, something shifted. I was out fixing a section of fence when Claire appeared beside me, wearing jeans and a simple shirt, holding a thermos. She looked out of place, but determined. "Mind if I help?" she asked. I handed her gloves, not sure she would last 5 minutes. She asked questions, listened, learned. She pricked her finger once and cursed quietly, then laughed at herself and kept going. That night, she tried cooking, burned the eggs a little, but we laughed about it. It was the first real conversation we had. She told me about her grandfather and his vision for protecting small farms. I told her about my parents and the droughts they survived. Something softened between us. But just when things seemed to be settling, the real danger was about to begin. The pressure came fast after that. Ryan filed a petition questioning our marriage. Articles started appearing online, painting me as a greedy farmer chasing a payout. Investigators showed up in town. Claire handled it head-on, defending us publicly, tying her reputation to mine. It surprised me how fiercely she stood her ground. Then came the sabotage. One morning, I found my irrigation pipes sliced clean through. Water flooded the field, ruining half the young crop. Claire's face hardened when I told her. "It's him," she said. "He's escalating." The real breaking point came a week later during a storm. I smelled smoke and ran to the storage shed. Flames were already climbing the walls. I fought it with everything I had until the fire department arrived. We lost most of the equipment and seeds. I collapsed in the mud, exhausted and burned. Claire rushed to me, panic written all over her face. Inside the house, she cleaned my hands gently, tears slipping down her cheeks. "This is my fault," she whispered. I shook my head. "No, we'll fix this together." That night, something changed between us. The deal no longer felt like just a deal. As the wind rattled the windows and she sat beside me, I realized I was no longer just protecting a business arrangement. I was protecting her. From the night of the fire, nothing felt pretend anymore. Claire didn't return to Lincoln. She stayed fully, like the farm was her home now and not just a hiding place. She used her own money to replace the damaged equipment, made sure every receipt was clean, every payment transparent. She stood beside me during insurance meetings, argued with adjusters when they tried to cut corners, and never once made it feel like she was rescuing me. We were partners, even if we had never said the word out loud. The press didn't let up. Stories kept coming, twisting the truth, calling our marriage convenient, calling me a pawn. It hurt more than I expected, not because of what they said about me, but because they were questioning something that had quietly become real. Claire faced them head-on. In interviews, she spoke about shared values, about protecting independent farmers, about why this marriage mattered. Every time she did, she tied her name to mine without hesitation. Ryan pushed harder. A week later, Claire got a call that drained the color from her face. Ryan had forced an emergency verification hearing with the board, a full audit of the marriage. If the board ruled it fraudulent, she would lose control of the company immediately, and I would be pulled into lawsuits and possible criminal charges for collusion. We had 48 hours. Those 2 days were chaos. Lawyers worked nonstop. Neighbors signed affidavits saying they had seen us together. Photos from grocery runs, shared calendars, clean bank statements, everything laid out like evidence in a trial. But the real battle wasn't legal. It was emotional. That night, we sat on the porch watching the fireflies flicker over the fields. The air was warm, heavy with the smell of soil and grass. Claire broke the silence. "What if we lose?" she asked. "The company, everything." I looked at her and said the truth before fear could stop me. This stopped being a deal for me. I don't know when it happened, but it did. She turned to me, eyes wide. Slowly, she reached for my hand. This time, it wasn't for show. We stayed like that, fingers intertwined, until the sky went dark. The hearing took place in Lincoln. Ryan sat on the screen with a smug smile, confident he had already won. He called our marriage a sham, called me a nobody farmer, accused us of fraud. The board asked hard questions. Fast marriage, separate finances, no history. Then Claire stood up. She admitted the truth, that it had started as necessity, that she needed to protect her grandfather's legacy. Then she said what no one expected. She said she had fallen in love with me, not for power, not for appearances, but because I treated her like an equal, not an asset. Before Ryan could react, her lawyer presented new evidence. Security footage from my farm showed someone setting the fire. Audio caught a voice. Ryan's voice. Bank records followed. Bribes, manipulation, fraud. Silence filled the screen. Ryan's face drained of color as authorities entered his office. The board suspended the hearing immediately. An hour later, they reconvened. Ryan was removed. The marriage was declared valid. Claire retained full control. When the call ended, she collapsed into my arms, shaking. I held her, realizing that somewhere along the way, we had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. We didn't just survive together. We chose each other. After the hearing, everything went quiet in a way that felt almost unreal. For weeks, our lives had been filled with pressure, fear, and eyes watching our every move. Then, suddenly, it stopped. Ryan was arrested, his allies removed from the board, and the threat hanging over us finally lifted. The farm felt different after that, like it could breathe again. And so could we. Claire returned to work with a strength I had never seen before. The board stood firmly behind her now, and she wasted no time cleaning house. She restructured the company, cut out the deals that harmed small farmers, and pushed hard for sustainable practices. She never tried to pull me into her world unless I asked. She knew the farm was my anchor, just like her company was hers. Instead, she supported me in quiet ways. Grants for better irrigation, connections to fair suppliers, help that respected my independence. At home, life settled into something steady and real. Mornings became shared routines. She brewed coffee while I fed the cattle. Evenings found us on the porch, watching the sky fade from blue to gold. The guest room slowly became our room. Her suits hung next to my work shirts, her heels by the door beside my boots. It happened naturally, without discussion. We argued sometimes about long calls that interrupted dinner, about my stubborn refusal to ask for help. But those fights ended in understanding, not distance. We learned how to meet in the middle. For the first time since my parents died, the house felt full again. Almost a year later, near the anniversary of our courthouse wedding, we made a decision. Not because of a will, not because of a board, but because we wanted to. We held the ceremony right on the farm under the wide Nebraska sky. No luxury, no pressure, just wildflowers, string lights, neighbors, and friends. Claire wore a simple white dress that moved with the wind. I wore clean boots and a nervous smile. The same judge officiated, smiling as he spoke. We wrote our own vows, honest ones, about choosing each other, about standing together through storms, about building something real. When I slipped the ring on her finger, I realized how far we had come. What started as desperation had become love. What began as a contract had turned into a life. Now, when we sit on the porch in the evenings, the fields stretching out before us, I think about that first day she drove up in her black SUV. She came asking for a husband. She stayed because we chose each other. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to Storysphere for more incredible tales of love, courage, and second chances. Hit that like button and share this story with someone who believes in the power of choosing love, even when it starts in the most unexpected way.